I became a therapist in the early 2000s, and by the time I graduated, I had already been married, I think, about 8 years. And so when my husband and I first got married, we were at similar maturity levels. We responded to things similarly. We had a typical first year. It's difficult, a lot of arguing and conflict, and tried to work through things but didn't really know what we were doing. And then I became a therapist and I began to understand some of the ways that conflict needed to be resolved in relationships and such. And so I tried to bring those things into my marriage, and I'll tell you, it kind of hit a wall in terms of it being even more difficult after becoming a therapist. You'd think with all the skills and such that it would be better, but we had a bit of a difficult time. And it's oftentimes I will say something like, it's very common for therapist marriages to be difficult places. And I think that it's really difficult to be married to a therapist because the expectations are high. And I think it's difficult for us as therapists because we desire so much. We can see that there's so much opportunity for connection that maybe we weren't getting before we knew that it was an option. So my name is Monica Maurer, and I am a licensed therapist. I'm also the director of the Center for Transformation. We exist to help therapists enhance their personal and professional growth. So we are here to really guide therapists on this journey of becoming all that you can be in order to not just grow yourself and live out a more meaningful and productive and fulfilling existence, but also to be able to offer the best of who you are to your clients so that they can heal and grow and change. So today's episode, this video is going to be about marriages, the therapist's marriage. Oh, it's a difficult task. And so here are some of the things that I've learned along the way. Staying in a marriage, we're almost married 25 years now. It's been 24, so next summer will be 25. And there are definitely some things I've learned along the way and that we've really grown in together that I think could be helpful to all you as a therapist if you are in a married relationship or you have a significant other. So the first thing that I think is really important is to be tender to the weakness of your significant other. I think what happens a lot of times as therapists is we grow, we get all these skills, left brain skills, we're learning concepts and such, and then we're trying to apply them right brain in terms of empathy and the way that we are with our clients. We're learning to relate and connect and bond in these deep ways. And we want to bring that to the table in our significant other relationships and our partner relationships. And so we bring that to the table, and sometimes it's not met with receptivity. It might be a bit threatening. It might be a bit different than what had been previously. And so I think in that moment, it could be an option. I know for me, it was the way that I responded with more like disappointment and anger and even judgment. Why don't you want this? Why don't you want to enhance our relationship in this way? And so it really became a contention between us, and I think it can happen that way in marriages. And so the idea is to be tender to that other person in terms of, I know I said weakness, and that's a technical term, but it's to perceive that the other person has not had these same opportunities for growth, and not to judge that, but to accept and love right where they are, and gently maybe model some empathic behaviors so that that can then become a part of your marriage, rather than kind of bulldozing and pushing your partner, your spouse, to move into that space. So tender to weakness has to do with not judging someone as less than or not as competent or not as worthy because they don't know the same things or aren't practicing the same things, but being able to accept them right where they are and truly look at them as a person who's worthy of love and belonging, and throw your heart and your soul into loving them and accepting them right where they are, so that they can experience that tenderness and then have that reciprocated, and then possibly see that modeled back to you. That would be the hope. But you don't do it to get that, right? It's not to give to get, but just to give, to be a person of compassion and kindness. And so that's the idea. And then the other idea is the second thing I'll say is that it's a good practice to actually go to therapy if you're a therapist. I know that when I first started therapy, I felt a little intimidated to go to marriage therapy or individual therapy. Like, oh, I should have the answers. I should be able to do this. I don't need therapy myself. And I am here to say that is a faulty way of thinking. I remember talking with one of my colleagues probably 10 or so years ago, and she said something like, if we really believe in this, if we really believe that therapy works, wouldn't we go to therapy? Right? And so I think if we don't, as therapists, embrace putting ourselves in a position of growth by going to therapy, whether that be individual or marriage or couples therapy, even group therapy or family counseling, then we are at a disadvantage. If we're not putting ourselves in that position, we are at a disadvantage in that we're not growing ourselves. If we don't grow ourselves, we're not going to be able to grow our clientele. And so it's really about us being able to put ourselves in that more vulnerable space, to be in going through some work, some therapeutic work, some psychological health journey work with another professional. I oftentimes will look outside of my own community so that I can find somebody that I'm not probably going to be collaborating with on client cases, et cetera, but looking for somebody in my wider state area, or someone that is more trained or skilled in a certain modality than I am, or someone who is older, has been married longer, or has been through more than I have, so that I can really grow from their modeling and the way that they are doing things. Of course, as therapists, we see through this lens of, I don't know, like, I wouldn't do it that way, or, and the other therapists may feel somewhat insecure too. But really, if we can be gentle in that space and loving and kind, and humble ourselves, put ourselves in that place of vulnerability, there's such an opportunity for growth in our individual lives and in our marriages, in our marriage relationships. And so thirdly, I'll just say, if your partner, if your spouse is not willing to do that work, it's really about being holding space with them and just being tender to them in the process that they're in. This could be very shocking transition for them as you are going into a space of wanting and desiring more. Maybe you're not the person that they married. You're different than they had expected, and so it's a shock for them, and they need some time. And I think as therapists, we can get so tunnel vision on what we want in our relationships that we forget to have fun and just be kind and peaceful and playful and engaging in ways that are not intimidating. I think it's a very common thing for someone who's married to a therapist to say, you're not my counselor. Don't try to be my counselor. We don't want to do that for our spouses. We don't want to be their therapist. We want to be their spouse. We want to be real, we want to be humble, we want to be connected, and we want to be vulnerable. And so those are important parts. And I think if we can, as therapists, synchronize with our significant other, if we can synchronize into a dance of love with them, we can lower the temperature in our marriages and really create a space where our spouse is willing to grow and learn. We have so much when we think about it. We've learned so much in grad school or in our doctoral programs. We've learned so much through our continuing education, and just the hour by hour we're sitting with clients, we're growing ourselves in that process, and our spouse doesn't have that opportunity. So we need to be patient with them as they go into a deeper space of even understanding what it is to be married to somebody who's doing this work. So I hope that's helpful, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Please subscribe so we can continue this journey together.